Welcome to week 2. We're going to do 2 things this week. First, we're going to continue to explore what social or cultural entrepreneurship is. So we're going to keep working on definitions. As you saw during week 1, there are ongoing debates about what each of these terms means. Some scholars differentiate cultural entrepreneurship by indicating that cultural entrepreneurship is focused on reimagining social roles and motivating new behaviors, changing the way people think and act, whereas social entrepreneurship is using business practices to work on solutions for social problems, using business practices to make social change. These are slippery terms, so we're going to continue to work on them. Social entrepreneurship does have a longer history. It's a term that's been in use for a while. Although some would argue that it's existed as a concept for quite some time now, the term cultural entrepreneurship is a newer term and a newer concept. We'll read more about this. Before we move further into the week 2 readings and materials, I want to talk just a little bit more about some of the ways that professionals are identifying and anchoring social entrepreneurship and cultural entrepreneurship. The Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship offers a definition of social entrepreneurship, but more interestingly, I think they offer 2 important lists. First, they claim that social entrepreneurs are people who achieve large-scale, systemic, and sustainable social change through a new invention, a different approach, a more rigorous application of known technologies or strategies, or a combination of these. One of the things that I hope you take from this class and from the work we're doing is that not all of this change has to be massive or large scale. Small, potent change can have big ripple effects, but Schwab orients around the big change. Social entrepreneurs are also people who focus on the social or ecological value creation. Financial value, of course, matters, but the social and the ecological come first. Social entrepreneurs innovate by finding a new product, a new service, or a new approach to a social problem. Social entrepreneurs continuously refine and adapt their approaches in response to feedback. The Schwab Foundation employs the following criteria when looking for leading social entrepreneurs: that they're innovative, they're sustainability oriented, and they're oriented around reach and social impact. They also look for people who combine the characteristics represented by Richard Branson and Mother Teresa. Richard Branson's key characteristics are that he's determined. And if you've ever read a biography about him, you see that. He's passionate and engaged in what he does. He perseveres when problems arise. He has personality. He's extroverted, agreeable, conscientious, enthusiastic, and warm. And maybe more importantly, as a social entrepreneur, he's flexible in his approaches. Mother Teresa is remembered and cherished as a person who was caring and selfless. She was strong, incisive, and persuasive, willing to speak up for others. She was idealistic in nature, but very pragmatic in action. Second, the Schwab Foundation claims that social entrepreneurs share some common traits: an unwavering belief in the capacity of all people to contribute meaningfully to economic and social development, a driving passion to make that happen. Social entrepreneurs share the trait of having a practical but innovative stance to a social problem, using market principles and forces coupled with determination that allows them to break away from constraints imposed by existing ideologies or a specific discipline and its way of seeing the world. Social entrepreneurs all share the trait of having a zeal to measure and monitor their impact. It's not enough to talk about change. You have to make change, you have to map change, and you have to measure change. Entrepreneurs have high standards, particularly in relation to their own organization's efforts and in response to the communities in which they engage. Use data effectively. And finally, social entrepreneurs, Schwab argues, have a healthy impatience. They won't sit back and wait for change to happen. They make the change. They are the change drivers. In an article called From Social to Cultural Entrepreneurship, Kathia Laszlo describes the different types of social entrepreneurship work. First, she describes community-based enterprises. Those are organizations based on the social ventures of an entire community that uses its culture and its capital to empower itself as an enterprise. An example of a community-based enterprise is the Detroit Community Cooperative, who runs a Center for Community-Based Enterprise. They define a community-based enterprise as a business or a productive asset owned by the people in a community and operated for the benefit of those people. Their vision statement articulates that they hope to achieve a Detroit imbued with a culture of collective ownership, where workers own their livelihoods, where neighborhood assets are leveraged for the benefit of neighbors, and communities are empowered through a shared economy. Second, Laszlo describes socially responsible enterprises, and that's enterprises that focus on creating sustainable development through their initiatives that focus mainly on social gains. An example that I think fits in the category of community-based enterprise and socially responsive enterprise is the Incubator Kitchen in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Uptown Kitchen is open 24/7. It provides commercial space for chefs and small business owners to cook and package and prep their goods for distribution. Owning a commercial kitchen space is really expensive. You have to have certain licenses, you have to maintain certain standards, you have to have all sorts of expensive equipment. The Incubator Kitchen provides the equipment for its members to come in and cook and bake and package their goods without having to run and own an individual facility. And the mission of the Incubator Kitchen is, in part, to foster entrepreneurship, good food, and community, to create, build, and cultivate processes to develop an ecosystem of good food businesses as part of Grand Rapids, Michigan's larger identity. Third, Laszlo describes social service industry professionals. These are individuals who work specifically in the sector of social services to expand social capital for different individuals, communities, and organizations. And I think a good example of this is Doctors Without Borders. They are a social services industry. They're a long-established organization. They provide medical care in emergency situations and within communities that otherwise wouldn't have access to care. They've provided ongoing long-term assistance, for instance, in Syria and in the countries housing the majority of Syrian refugees. You could argue that Doctors Without Borders is a non-governmental organization and a nonprofit. It is, but I would argue that it's more. I would argue that Doctors Without Borders is an example of a social services industry engaged in social entrepreneurship, in part because of the innovative nature of the organization. An example of this innovation is their mentoring and training process. They don't just enter an area, offer some help, and leave. They train people to help each other. They make communities stronger. A specific example of the way in which they fostered innovation is that they're one of many groups calling for companies, organizations, and governments to better address hunger beyond food programs. Food programs are really important, but it takes a lot of time, energy, and resources to cultivate and distribute food. So one of Doctors Without Borders partners is Manna Relief, an organization that's spearheading the development of nutrient-rich, easy-to-distribute food. Fourth, and finally, Laszlo describes socio-economic enterprises, which includes corporations that balance earning, profits, and nonprofit social change. And this is maybe the most contentious category here. Some skeptics see companies that claim to be social entrepreneurs or community anchored as just adopting the label without truly helping social causes. This is a similar accusation to that of greenwashing, or when a company says they're environmentally friendly, but they really don't do much in terms of eco-friendly practices or environmental sustainability. But I don't think we should be totally skeptical or negative about socio-economic enterprises, because there are a lot of companies that do make a big difference in the world while they make a profit. You'll read and watch a video about one this week, that of Tom's Shoes. So Laszlo offered these 4 categories to consider. And again, these aren't the only definitions. They're the only categories. In the piece I just reviewed, Kathia Laszlo drew from the work of Courtney Martin and Lisa Witter, who wrote that groundbreaking article arguing for a further distinction between social and cultural entrepreneurship. You guys read that piece last week. This week, we're going to continue exploring definitions. The first piece you're going to read is by Roger Martin and Sally Osberg. It was published in Forbes magazine. After that piece, we're going to quickly move into the technological context of social and cultural entrepreneurship. As you guys can imagine, emergent changing tools and technologies have transformed the ways in which we share ideas, build and make change in the world, connect across spaces, and more. You're going to read a piece by Ashoka. Ashoka is, according to their website, the largest network of social entrepreneurs in the world. They have more than 3,000 fellows in 70 different countries. You might look at their website. There are great examples and resources there that might help for class projects down the road. Then we're going to read a piece by Blake Mycoskie, who is the CEO and founder of Tom's Shoes. Technology is one resource that social and cultural entrepreneurs rely on, but there are many other resources critical to successful initiatives. And in this chapter, Mycoskie talks about the technological and cultural resources he leveraged when building his company. The next three pieces are cases. They're all short videos that help explain our contemporary social and digital media context. If you want to engage in social and cultural entrepreneurial work, you have to know this context and how it influences and shapes the work that you can do. Finally, for this week, we have One Spark, the Free Rice Project. Play the game and then read the About Me statement on the website. For this week, you'll be working on Project 2. For Project 2, you're going to add a page to the website that you created for Project 1. And specifically, you're going to research and find an example of social or cultural entrepreneurship in your profession. Then you're going to write a brief profile of that example and move that profile onto the web page, which you'll publish as a link from your Project 1 page. To get started on Project 2, first take a look at this week's creativity readings, cases, and sparks. Then click on the Project 2 overview link, which includes the assignment itself, an example I created, and links to 2 student projects that I think are excellent examples of Project 2 work. Happy creating!